Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to First Fridays for the Chancellor's Doctoral Incentive Program, our first Friday for January 2023. I am Kelly Young. I'm a professor of biological sciences at California State University, Long Beach, and the CDIP faculty director for the 22-23 academic year. I am super excited to introduce and so pleased that she will be joining us today, Dr. Laura Gonzalez. She is an associate professor of finance at Cal State Long Beach. She's also the vice president and program chair of the Southwestern Finance Association. And the reason I connected with Dr. Gonzalez was through her mentoring. She's an avid mentor of Europe scholars, McNair scholars, honors scholars, really invested in mentorship. In fact, she was one of the first graduates of our Advancing Inclusive Mentoring / Beach Mentor program. So it really makes me excited to have you here, Dr. Gonzalez, to share on these tips, these important tips for financial literacy. Before we begin, as we do for every first Friday, we always ask our guests to share just a little bit about your academic journey. If you will, as a way of introducing yourself, I would love it if you'd share part of your journey to get you to where you are today. And welcome.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So I'm originally from Spain. That's where I did my bachelor's. And then I came to the United States. And at the beginning, I thought that I was just going to do my master's degree and then go back. But the professors actually told me about doing a PhD. And I had many concerns. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do well. That was number one. And two, whether I would be able to have enough money to do a PhD. And so it was actually my professors in master's who encouraged me to apply, and they explained to me how things work in the United States. Well, one thing that I would like to share with you is that I have been teaching here in California for about 7 years, and before that in New York City for about 8 years. I have been mentoring for more than 15 years. I actually started as a master's student, and then I was even an advisor when I was a PhD student. It brings me a lot of happiness to mentor students and also to do research with them and then to see them become professors or PhD holders in corporations or working for regulation, regulators such as the Federal Reserve, for example, Securities and Exchange Commission, because they can really make a difference in the life of everyone living in the United States. So what we are going to talk about today is the path to completing a terminal degree, whether you want to be a practitioner or work in academia. And in academia, you can also work full-time or part-time. It is very flexible. There are many different options. So it's very important, even starting when we are undergraduate students, to do budgeting and to know how to get the maximum amount of money through scholarships and financial aid. I wouldn't be here today without scholarships and financial aid because I couldn't pay for my master's. So it was thanks to a full tuition waiver that I could complete my master's and also my PhD. And besides that, I also used to work on campus like many of you. And it is possible to graduate without debt. But it's important to be mindful of budgeting. So one thing I always tell all my mentees is that I completed my PhD with a $500 van, and I drove it all the way from Florida to New York, to Manhattan. And then once I got there, I donated it because it was just $500. But how did I get there? Because I graduated on time and maximized the time for studies. Okay, it's very important to get good grades. That's how you get into good PhD programs. And then once you are in the PhD program, you want to work with the best possible mentors and to publish and be competitive in the job market. So very important, financial aid, we need to plan on time because normally it takes longer than usual. Scholarships, we have them in the colleges, we have them nationally and also at the university level. Okay, and then very important, about 10% of people that got stimulus checks have invested in cryptocurrencies and other not so good ideas using fintech. One form of fintech is the apps in our cell phones. Okay, so if we have some savings, we have to think about how to repay any existing credit card that we may have. And if we do not have any debt outstanding, then how to invest safely. It's not very exciting, safe long-term towards future plans that we may have professionally or personally.
That's great. That's a wonderful overview. And I want to actually step back even a little bit further. And because I know you had shared a slide with me, and I didn't even think about that this was something until you started talking about, like, wait, why do we even need this? You know, why do we need financial literacy? And I think particularly at this stage of being a graduate student, a postdoctoral fellow, or a beginning assistant professor, why do we need this right now?
Well, it is expensive just to apply for PhD programs. I remember when I was a student doing my master's that the applications to PhD programs just cost me, just the applications, $2,000. So I had my full tuition waiver to do my master's, and then I was working in the international office, and I was also tutoring. But it really helped me to work on campus because I could meet people that would give me very valuable information. I tried to do things in relation to my major, things that could help me with the application to PhD, would give me also additional savings. I did not have to drive, so I was saving time. But I was also very mindful of my expenses. So I didn't eat out that much, and I shared a lot of facilities with people. I shared kitchen, I shared bathroom with people, even though I had already completed my studies in Spain, and I could say, well, you know, it's time to live a life. I was determined not to get into debt and to be able to save to do a PhD once I decided that that's what I wanted to do, because I did not want to continue tutoring during PhD. So I needed some savings.
Absolutely. So I think that's so important to be really thoughtful and mindful about what you're spending, what money's coming in. I think it sounds really simple on the surface, but I know in real life, it's much more complex than that. There's so much more that goes into that. And I know there's more than that we can even cover today. One thing that you had mentioned, and I know that we offer here at Cal State Long Beach, is the Financial Literacy 101. It is not offered everywhere, but can you share a little bit about why what any of our seated fellows might want to look to see if they can access it through their CSU connection or through the R1 university where they're now, because many universities have adopted this, correct?
Yes, okay. I really recommend this because first, once you open an account, it's available for life and it's free. The only thing students have to do is to open the account before graduation. Once they do that, it's free for them and for their families accessing it through their account. It has a lot of useful information that they may not consider now, but they may need in the future if they want to start a business, for example. This is important because students are getting into too much debt even before completing their undergraduate degree. So it is important, of course, to maximize the sources of free money, financial aid, tuition waivers, scholarships, federal work study, doing research that helps us get internships. We need good grades and internships in order to get paid more and learn more. This also helps with applications to PhD studies. And then we have to remember that credit card debt is really very dangerous We are tempted because we can pay the minimum amount, but that means that we continue borrowing from credit cards the rest, the bigger amount. And the interest rates are very high. Interest rates in general are higher than from other sources of credit, and they are increasing for everyone. So now, because of inflation, interest rates are going up, which means that interest in credit cards will go up even more. So we should be very mindful about credit cards. Sometimes when we go to a store, they offer us a 10% discount. And it may be a good idea when we are preparing for job interviews or to work, etc., to make use of these offers once, right? But it's very important to repay the card and then close the card to build the credit, okay? It's important not to have outstanding debt. And if you have some savings, it's important to repay first the credit card with the highest interest rate. Normally, people want to pay the lowest balance to forget about it, or the largest balance, so it's not so worrisome. But really, the best strategy is to repay first the highest interest rate. Then the other reason why I really like Financial Literacy 101, besides being very easy to follow, very useful, very comprehensive, free for life, what else, right, is that we can rely on it, we can trust it. Oftentimes we see in magazines, television, or anywhere, workshops offered by professionals that make a living investing for other people and charging fees, or people that are working for financial institutions. The problem with this is that even though they may be knowledgeable about the different options for investment, they are not impartial in the sense that they are working for commissions and they have corporate goals. So one reason why I like Financial Literacy 101 is because they will give you complete, easy to follow information, and there is absolutely no conflict of interest.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. So what you're saying is when we see these ads or we see, financial literacy or learn more about finances, and it's coming from a bank or an investment firm or somebody working in the field, it can't be free from conflict of interest. Like they have something that they want to get from us, right? Our business. That's so, but this doesn't, and other, this program does not, correct?
Yes, people that are very successful investors that do not need our money, well, when they announce that they have invested on something, and sometimes it's famous investors or celebrities, we have seen this with cryptocurrencies, what they are going to do is to increase the demand. When they increase the demand, other people buy it, then the price of what they have already bought at a lower price goes up. And so when the price goes up for them, then they can sell their holdings and make profits. But those that arrived later and paid the higher price cannot see an even higher price to make a profit and get out.
Okay. Oh, good to know. Okay, so I think the takeaway right here is if you please Google Financial Literacy 101, probably all in quotes, and see if that comes up is available at your university. We know it's available at some CSUs. We know it's available at some UCs. Please check to see if you have access to it, because it sounds like that's something that we can trust. It's not, there's no conflict of interest. I'm going to go ahead and close the slides because I want to ask you, I know I'm getting a lot of questions from our CDIP fellows about two main areas. And the first is about savings. So how do we save? I mean, I think this is a challenging thing as a graduate student, as a postdoc, as a beginning assistant professor. Are there ways that we can build a savings habit when there may not be a whole lot of money coming in?
Yes, so it is very important to take a piece of paper and pencil and write down all our expenses. If we just take a look at the charges on the credit cards, it really helps us see that there is no wrong charge, right? And we can know maybe the different places where we spend, maybe our budget in Starbucks is too high, but we do not get the full picture because we use several credit cards, we pay some things with cash, and some charges go directly to the bank. So budgeting means that we consider all the sources of income and then all the sources of expenses, including subscriptions. And then the basics. Do we really need to live alone? Can we share car? What can we do to reduce expenses? Eating out is one of them. And going hungry to the supermarket is not a good idea. So one thing that we can do now when we are planning our health, because financial literacy is also physical and mental health. We have to write down everything the same way we would do it to lose weight or to get into shape, right? We need a plan. So in some universities, we have a basic needs program. Same thing in Long Beach. Everyone can have access to the pantry, and we also have CalFresh. There are a lot of options to eat in an affordable manner beyond the pantry, which is fully free. But we need to plan. There are very easy recipes. The university, at least in Long Beach, is actually telling the students how to prepare quick, easy, nutritious meals. And so we need to plan in advance because we are really getting fit financially and also physically and mentally. It is important for students in order to think clearly, to have an organized day in terms of the time for studies, time to sleep, good diet, and clear finances. Because when the finances are not in order, we cannot get anything done. It's important to identify which are the sources of income that can be better than what we currently have. So again, besides scholarships and financial aid and all these sources of support, like the pantry, right, in the university's basic needs program, we also have to take a look at research opportunities on campus. Because if we have research opportunities that are funded by federal work study, we are working on campus, so we do not have to commute. We are doing something in relation to the mayor. We establish connection with professors that are going to mentor us towards the future, and not just doing well in the classes. And we are getting very valuable skills for internships, full-time jobs, and then PhD.
No, that's great. And you know, our fellows are either full-time PhD students or full-time postdocs, or we have fellows now because the program's been going on since 1987. So we have people like me who are now professors, but particularly it's our beginning professors, those who have just taken a job who are asking about this. And I love the way that you frame this, you know, in terms of, it's like meal planning, not going to the grocery store hungry. These are ways of actually not just for your physical health, but for your financial health as well. That I've never heard that before. I think that's fabulous, a fabulous tip.
Then one thing, sorry to interrupt, one thing that I did when I was a PhD student is I did not have just for myself all the facilities. So as a master student, I shared a kitchen and bathrooms with other people in the residence hall. Some people decided to get into that, to live in their own apartment. And then as a PhD student, I had my own kitchen and my own bathroom, but I was still sharing the laundry. And some fellow PhD students would get into that not to share laundry. And, you know, it was very convenient. I was very close to the office, so I did not have to eat outside on campus. I could go home. Setting the laundry is really not a big burden. And my $500 van would take me everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of choices we can make. Sometimes we are very constrained. You know, many of our students are supporting a family. Yes. There's other, you know, lots of things going on. But definitely there's choices that come up, that come at us all the time, and being thoughtful about those choices. That's a great tip. Mm-hmm. I'd love to get into the question that I get asked the most, that students and fellows are asking about, which is talking about debt. Yes. Student loans are the way that so many students are able to finance their graduate careers and undergraduate too. But can we just start with something really basic? What does that mean to take out a loan that is charging interest?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that first?
It means that we have to return what we have borrowed and more. And so we have to remember when we are borrowing for studies or for a car, which we should never do. We should never borrow to buy a car because it loses value very quickly. Our education makes us more valuable forever, but a car becomes less valuable the moment you drive it out of the car dealer. So we should never borrow to buy a car. When we are investing in our education, which is our financial future, and also for us and for our family, we are also investing in our personal growth. It's intellectual growth. It's not just a way to make a living. We have to be mindful that if we choose a plan to repay things over a longer period of time, the monthly payments will be smaller, but the interest rate will be greater. So the way to pay less interest is really to borrow less so that we can repay in a short period of time with monthly amounts that are still doable. Because otherwise, if we borrow too much, we cannot afford to repay it in a short period of time. So we go with a longer period of time so that the monthly payments are doable, but then the interest rate is much higher. The number one reason why people cannot pay their student loans is because they do not graduate. So that's a big one. That once we get into this, it takes preference, and we really postpone vacations and other things.
Okay, wow, that's a really important thing to keep in mind too. And I know our seated fellows are going to graduate and earn that PhD and finish that postdoc and all that, but it's something definitely to consider. In terms of that debt, what does it mean if you default on a loan? What is that? What happens to you? What is the what does that mean?
Well, it's like getting an F in a report card that everyone is going to be able to see for the rest of your life. When you are applying for a job, when you are applying for a rental place, and worse, when you are applying for a mortgage. So if when you are applying for a job, or when you are applying for a new credit card or for a mortgage, etc., people see that you have defaulted in the past, then they put us in a risky category. And just for that, they charge us a very high interest rate. So we want to lower our interest rate by not defaulting in previous debt, besides trying to borrow as little as possible and be able to repay it in a low in a timely fashion, in a small period of time. It just sends a bad signal, because even if we say, well, those were special circumstances and I was young and I was not informed, it is just a problem in the record. And if it leads to personal bankruptcy, it's even worse.
Mm. That's true. That is something that stays with you forever for the rest of your life as you're trying to borrow and be just to buy a house or to buy a car. And that, well, now we know not to take a loan to buy a car, but to buy anything in the future. And what I'm hearing you say too is, even if you have a larger amount available to you to borrow, you should borrow what you need.
Correct.
And be really defining the need. It sounds like not just, oh, I have this amount, I'm just going to take it, but be more thoughtful so it's a smaller amount. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. We do not have a credit card limit to maximize it. We just use in the credit card what we strictly need, and we make sure that we repay it every month. And if something happens one month, then we need a strategy to pay it off. Because otherwise we are living above our means and we have to repay all that debt with very high interest rate. And that's a problem. So that's why we need to plan. We need to budget with paper and pencil to study the situation and to have a strategy.
For sure. I think that that's really important. And probably the same goes for loans too. Borrow what you know you need instead of taking a loan for something more.
Yes, it's not something that you take just in case. It's something that you need for sure and you need it now. Because let's imagine that you are planning what you may need in the next 5 years, right? If you are starting the PhD, etc. Well, you do not know what earning potential you may have in 2 years. So just borrow what you need now. And then, you will borrow more if you need it in the future. And if you start making money and you can actually repay what you are borrowing now sooner, that sends a signal of being higher quality. So next time that you borrow, they will actually charge you even less because you are doing well in the studies, plus you have a history of not just not defaulting, but even repayment.
Okay, and is that coming through our credit report or our credit scores? Is that how that is a set? Like, can you walk us through what is your credit report and what are those scores?
Yes, so we have to think about all these financial institutions as teachers that talk to one another, right? So they have the grades and they just recommend good students to other instructors. So it's the same thing. The financial institutions report to the credit agencies that we are repaying our credit cards or any loan that we have outstanding. And then this builds a good grade. It's like having a good GPA. And so when we apply with a good credit score for a rental place or mortgage or for a job, they can see in that credit score that all the different financial institutions are reporting good things about you. So that's why it is important to have a good record with everyone because they all have access to all our information and it's all consolidated into the FICO scores. Now, I have to mention here that the financial institutions are using, besides the FICO score, digital footprint. So digital footprint is everything that we do with our phones. The data is being collected and it's very easy to transfer and it's cheap. It's not expensive at all for banks and for credit cards to have access to this. And so they know when we are online shopping, for example, and we have to be careful because sometimes these algorithms penalize us in a way that is justified on a national average, but it may not be even fair for all of us. So, for example, they have determined using digital footprint that people that buy online between midnight and 6 a.m. are more likely to default on credit cards and on mortgages. So this information is fed into the algorithms used by the different credit cards, banks, etc. And those people are charged a higher interest rate. And so we have to be mindful if I can do my shopping, which sometimes is for essentials in the house, to do it before midnight.
I did not know that. So I should not put in my Target order after I finish work.
Yeah, that is something that happens to me because, I have a family, I have to do the grading, I have many things, but, it's better to wait and buy maybe the kitchen paper. We leave it in the shopping cart and we buy the following day if we are placing it in the cart after midnight.
Okay. I will change that and make sure. That's a great tip. So that's for that. You said the FICO score? And they use that plus digital footprint. They're doing both things.
Everything goes into the algorithms that they use because they want to predict probabilities of default. And so they are interpreting digital data in a way that, is not always fair. But they want algorithms that are legal, right? That do not violate legislation and that on average work. So the problem is that we are not all the same and we have to be mindful.
That's really good to know. I think that is actually a very important thing, especially as a grad student, a postdoc, and a beginning assistant professor, or any professor really, but because we may be having a different work pattern, and then, oh, I'm just going to put that order in now when I'm done. Any other thoughts or tips for, I know there's a big transition when you finish your graduate degree, you finish your postdoc, wherever that, depending on your field, and you get that assistant professor job. Suddenly money is coming in a different way, which is good. That's a positive. But what are some things that our brand new assistant professors should do then to sort of set themselves up for their future, with this new influx of money?
Well, it's very important to start planning for retirement. We cannot rely on pensions and social security. So what we have to do is to just put aside a few $100s every month and to invest in an index. People promise all kinds of superior returns, but when we deduct management fees, nothing really beats the index funds over a longer period of time. So if we put it to be done automatically from our paycheck, we do not get the money, so it's pre-tax, and so we do not spend it. And with a few $100s every month, we can safely prepare for retirement. It's also very important to have a good health insurance. And it's important also to open an account with a credit union, because there are some for educators and they offer a higher interest rate on the savings when we deposit there, and they charge a lower interest rates on the mortgages.
And that is something that's open to people who are in the educational field?
Yes. Okay. So long we qualify for membership in the credit union, we can get higher interest rates. And then they also have summer savings programs. And then when we apply for mortgages, they can help us get a mortgage with lower interest rate. We just have to qualify for membership. But then the most important thing is to repay the debt, to continue doing the budgeting, and to start preparing for retirement. Index funds, research shows that, well, they are not exciting and they are not something to talk about with friends or anything, but they are safe, and over a longer period of time, they prepare us for retirement because it's low management fees and we are really diversified. We are investing in the technology, pharmaceutical, energy, all of them. So is this... the only trick is to start as early as possible, not to wait until our 40s.
That's such a good point, because I think you start and you think, oh, retirement's so far away and 10 years so far, but really starting when you begin. And I know that at new faculty orientations, they throw all this information at you and they tell you about paycheck deductions. Maybe that's the last thing you want is to have a lower paycheck. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's important to just, yes, sign up for it, get it, start having those deductions. So you have to see that money. It just is gone and it's invested in your future.
Yes, correct.
And start when you start. Okay. One last thing that you had mentioned to me, which was, and I would love for you to share this too, was that, and you mentioned it a little bit before, which was financial health is your overall health. And you talked a little bit about staying financially literate through our lives, not just like through an Excel file or whatever, but through so many different things we do in our lives, how we keep our houses, how we keep our, lives. Can you share a little bit about that in this last question? About
so even the physical space where we are, when a space is decluttered, it helps us declutter our minds, and then we can think more clearly and we can plan everything better. Our exercise, our diet, our finances. And when things are in place and we are more relaxed, we are less stressed, we are healthier, we can think better, we can get more things done, we make less mistakes. So everything is really together. And sometimes people think, well, but finance is very math oriented and I do not like math. Well, the principles of finance are very simple. It's just common sense. There is this professor in Harvard that has published a book several years ago. It's called The Wisdom of Finance. And so he's talking there about how even in the Jane Austen novels, which are really love novels of 19th century England, how the way women were thinking about the suitors and their lives, etc., the decisions that they were making were finance decisions. When they were diversifying their risk by having different prospects and they were trying to time their proposals, etc., all those are finance decisions. Really, the basis of finance, the concepts are very simple, and it's important for us not to think that we have to trust other people blindly for making decisions for us. We need to be in charge, and we can be informed. We don't need complex algorithms to understand the basic concepts. And so if something is not clear or seems too complex or too good to be true, then most likely it's not good.
That's good life advice, I think. And you had also said staying, physically fit, sleeping, eating, and I had never heard this before, but you said this was a key to retirement savings.
Yes. So in evolution for thousands of years, we have been conditioned to make some decisions that can be life-saving if we are, for example, in a state or national park and we are attacked by a bear. But when those instincts are used in finance because we are stressed or we are competing with our neighbors or friends or because we are tired, etc., we make bad decisions and we lose money.
And that can really, that's
there is a field in finance, actually, behavioral finance, and it's about that. When we are stressed, when we are overconfident, we just make bad decisions. That kind of impulses are good in other circumstances, but never in finance. Safe finance is not exciting. It just takes tenacity. Well, same thing with studies, right? When we are doing a PhD, we are just working every day, long term. Finances is the same way. And if we think about it, to do a PhD, we don't need to be geniuses. We just need to follow a process step by step. Same thing with finance.
That's a great thing to put into our minds. We can do this.
Yes.
We're very good at working hard to get to where, all of our CETA fellows are. So we can do this.
Yes.
Any last tips for our fellows that you'd like to share? Any last thoughts?
Well, I would like to congratulate everyone on their choices. As I have mentioned before, when we pursue higher studies, and that was a reason for me to come to the United States, it's not just that we are looking for professional opportunities, but there is a lot of personal growth in pursuing higher academic studies.
Absolutely. Well, we're proud of all the fellows and all that they're doing and all that they are about to do. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez. I learned a lot. I hope our fellows did too. I think that this has been really informative, and I hope everybody goes ahead and Googles Financial Literacy 101 and the name of your university to see if your university provides this, because this is just this is like a starting point, but to learn more. Thank you again for your time, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.